早起到场吃早餐的各位同学。好，对，那就是今天早上的那个就是节奏是比较 free 一点的。那因为早上其实大家到的那个时间也会很不一定。那我们本来就是早上会先安排一个大概20到30分钟，我先试玩这个游戏，然后一边在试玩的时候大概做点简短的介绍。那如果等一下大家对这个游戏的内容或是设计一些想法，或者说对开发者就是 Adam 本人有一些兴趣，就是想要提问的话，那就是可以主动提问，你用中文提问也可以。那我可以就是再帮你简单的翻成英文这样子。对。那我们就是等其他剩下的人就是一路陆续进来的过程中，我就一边玩游戏这样。那早上就比较 free 一点。好啦 ，Overland 这款游戏，就我了解，好像 Adam 他其实他们那个工作室已经做蛮久了，就是这个专案应该已经做了大约2-3年以上。对，那这个游戏也算是他们做过的，应该算规模最大的一款游戏。对，那基本上的概念是，你就是你要横跨美国，从美国的东岸到美国西岸，然后路上就是有点像是某种灾变后的情景，然后你要用各种捡破烂的方式去想办法，就是收集资源，然后慢慢就是路过一段又一段的路障之类的。那这个故事本身其实好像还没有很明确的说，为什么剧情是这样子发展，或者为什么它的世界观会变成这样子。但基本上它的玩法就是一个 roguelike 的生存游戏，然后执行的方式是策略回合的概念。那这边先让它，因为我后来发现它这个字的那个解析度好像就是字体大小都没办法调，所以字有点小。那我就先简单玩一下。那一开始就是你能控制是一只角色，那你看到画面上每一关的地图大概都只有这么大而已。那画面上有另外一个人，这边是他等下会主动跑来问你说他可不可以加入这样，所以你可以就是你可以选择性的在你的地图上算是收集队友。然后这边是点 invite 请他加入，那这样你的队友就会直接变2个。然后下面它的概念是就是行动点的概念，就是所有的移动都要花费1个行动点，然后所有其他的动作也都要花费一个行动点。那有一些特殊角色，在很随机的情况下会遇到的，他可能就会有2个行动点，就他可能会有3个行动点。然后如果你受伤的话，是会直接扣行动点上限，所以你如果受伤的话，你就几乎不能动。对，然后它这个交流关主要目的是要让你看出来这边有一台车，这画面上因为投影出来的画面对比稍微低一点，可能比较看不清楚。这边有一台车，那 OK， 等一下。对啊，你的车一开始是被这个垃圾桶挡住。那这个垃圾桶其实也可以找资源，比如说你可以翻垃圾桶，就有 search， 然后大家可以找垃圾桶，然后 找完之后，你就把那种推开。但是过了大概4、5回合之后，你就会听到有奇怪的声音，就是其实怪物会就是慢慢的从四面八方出现。那刚刚我拿了4格油，我就再多拿4格油。这里也有油这样子。OK。听到奇怪的虫声。总之开始就对了。这下面这只就是会跑来打你的，一开始是小怪，后来会越出越强的怪。那这个游戏因为它概念其实主要是生存而不是战斗，所以其实你会发现你的角色在没有任何道具跟武器的情况下，你是不能进行任何战斗的。你空手不能去打熊这样。那基本上坐到车之后，如果车到主要干道上没有任何障碍物的话，它基本上是可以只花1格行动就直接逃脱这样。然后这边开始就会开始需要比较策略选择的阶段，就是它一样有几大场景，然后每一大关可能有5到7、8个节点，那你就是要一个地图一个地图过。那像刚刚我一开始出来油是加满了，我可能就不选择去加油，可能就是它这边有个说是可能可以找到有用的道具，然后是比较还算安全这样，就是第一个地图都稍微都还算比较简单的。那刚刚有讲到，就是他空手的时候，他的概念是空手的时候其实完全不能打敌人。那但是地图上有任何东西，其实几乎都可以捡起来。所以像这边有个树枝，你可以捡起来。然后这边有个石头也可以捡起来。那这种敌人，他目前我看过的所有敌人都是会依照角色发出的声音的位置去移动的，所以你可以想办法诱敌。那另外一只角色就暂时再去方向找过一下，这样。他可能找到一个比较强，这是一把刀，就刀可以用。它这边可能比较看不清楚，这边其实有4个点，然后我下面手上有的这个树枝只有2个点，就是2个点就只能打2次，那4个点可以打4次，打完就坏掉这样子。然后这虽然有一点点不合理，它基本上虽然有人有2只手，可是他选择是一次只能拿1个东西。所以刚刚如果我把刀捡起来的话，树枝就会放回地上。那比如说，我应该可以想办法丢石头。不能丢。不能丢石头。对啊，这个概念是这样，就是虽然一开始遇到敌人很弱，你打一下咚咚就会挂掉，可是所有的重大的声响都会引来更多敌人。它这个游戏里面概念就是所有敌人都是受声音牵引的。那你如果做很大的声响的话，反而会产生更多的敌人出来。所以最好的过关方式其实是什么声音都不要做。你看这边他在挖洞。这样很重要。好，那这时候看到很好笑的情况是， 我手上拿一把刀，可是这边有一个工具箱，以后可以拿来修车子用。那我现在的选择就是只能先把刀丢掉，好，去捡箱子，再走过来，然后他动作就做完了。那还好的是，一开始第一大关遇到的敌人，一次都只能动一个，但是你的人都可以一次动2个，所以你一定可以把对方引走。走过来，丢掉，走过来。只走一格。你敢走过头？再把刀丢掉。再捡箱子。再走过来。哇，再把它丢掉。
这觉得很奇怪吗？
没有，就是有。目前的规则是需要用这种有一点微妙的微操作。我们不要再走，先随便走。好，先把这箱子丢着。
故意不杀那只东西。
对，故意不杀。因为其实你杀人，就是你杀任何敌人，你自己都会消耗那个，比如道具的使用次数，或者是你可能会召唤出更多敌人。
然后另外一只是把东西搬到车上。
对，另外一只负责把东西搬到车上。我想想看。对，我刚刚把工具箱丢错边了。交换一下。下车，捡起来，再上车。好，然后这个还有一格，开车走。那接下来可能愿意的话，可以再去找另外一个人。然后这有很有趣的地方是，你注意到车上其实只有3个座位，它这边还有一个 empty seat， 所以你车上最多只能坐3个人。如果你一直收队，你想一直收队的话是不行的，你不能说怎么叫队友坐后车厢或坐天花板是不行的。然后如果你直接抛下一个你看得到的人类的话，他就会骂你。不过我今天是狗太棒了。好，跟下来。然后我们就对狗使用招降，然后就可以使用狗。又把它丢掉。那盾牌是很有用的东西，因为盾牌可以把敌人推走，可是不用杀他，那就不会发出奇怪的噪音，那就不会召唤出更多敌人。然后狗可以把东西叼起来。虽然它都不能用，可是它可以就是当做一格暂存空间。好，让狗上车。好，走了。
站一个。
对，可是我现在问题是我车应该快没有了。好，车快没有，就只好去。好，不一定。刚下面的是可能可以去找另外一台车。哎呦，这运气好像不错，好像没有敌人。那就是让狗下车一下，然后把东西丢着。有油了。对，当然是因为狗不能加油，所以你还要叫人下车。这样我可以，对，那因为我现在已经有3个人了，所以其实我车都载不下了，那其实就不能去这里。你也可以去了，但是你去的话，可能是你要选择牺牲掉其中一个队友。OK， 那这边就是第一个考验玩家比较难的地方，这种怪物是第一次出现，它血有2格，然后你会发现车子不能开到草地上，然后这边路障上有2个垃圾桶，那你可以开车去撞爆1个垃圾桶，可是没办法连续撞爆2个，因为车的血只有，严格上来说车的血只有1而已，所以这个时候，我想想看。机车，然后好像没有油哎。有点危险。拖移走，然后拉这个，你拉那个垃圾桶这边也会出现心理的。然后理论上我这样可以过关。
可是你车就没血了。
对，我车就会开始冒烟。好，应该来得及。哇！上车，上车，还有一个人没动作。对，然后车就冒烟了。
我可以把它压死。
小只才能压，大只不能压，大只你也会损1格血。对，然后到中间这一段之后就会变得非常难。其实也没有到非常难，只是你要很仔细的算每一个步骤。这边有运气。可是没有油的话我就爆了。居然有油。我看一下时间，还有4分钟。又熄火，害怕。 因为时间的关系，我这边这个就不摄取完，直接上车离开。想看一个，去找一个那个敌人看起来比较多的状况。都是有，不好意思。好，这边就多一个路人，那我不能救他。可是我可以。然后像这边路边有看起来有半损毁的车子，你就是可以去吸它的油。对，他会走过来想要你救他，可是不能救他，因为我车是满的。诶，我是按错键。他会帮你挡一下。但不对。哇，下一阶段都然后，如果你遇到没有的情况，不会直接 game over， 他会让你就是他会送你进一个类似像 boss fight 的状态。然后，如果你可以在这场战斗中捡到油的话，对，那最后可以看一下，就是这边的敌人就会变很强，就是长角敌人就会，他移动速度就跟你一样快，就会一次可以走2步。然后它的世界观设定就比较微妙，就是像这种东西其实是像炸弹一样，对，他自己去爆的。对，那炸了之后，它就会一次，你看它这边就一次会出现1、2、3、4、5，前面会出现5只，是6只，所以2回合之后，地图上就会多6个敌人。那基本上我这样应该已经输了。对，所以大概是像这样的游戏。
不是死给我看一次吗？
啊？死。好，死一次。下车。好，叫狗去打人。
哦，我刚压死了。
对，狗很强。不过那是因为敌人血只有一，敌人血只有1个。我也可以推炸弹。好，自爆。然后它的设定是你如果没有车的话是离不开地图的。狗屎了！对，所以，我可以走吗？可以 ，escape。这还是很绝望啊，有屁用啊！上车。我就爆了。
车子爆。
看我刚没看到，刚刚车上有个铁管，铁管是不会打坏的。然后它游戏里面有些判定是只有10字，而且像你移动是8方向，所以其实这个游戏有一点 tricky 的，就是你要算清楚你现在走的方向步数有没有属于就是你有没有想办法算到最短步数这样。 好，这就自杀了。过好了。对，那其实游戏的完成度到目前为止，我实际全部就是有把目前内容全部破完之后，才发现其实完成度其实还没有非常高，大概目前完成度可能才一半而已。就是过了平原之后，接下来是山区，然后山区再过完，其实这个 demo 版就结束了。OK， 好，那我现在跟 Adam 那边连线。
Hello, hello.
Hello, Adam. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. Can you see the camera? Guys behind me.
Yeah, hey everybody. Good morning.
Yes. Yeah. Are you still awake?
Yeah, I'm doing okay.
Okay. Good. Okay. Let me adjust the speaker for a little bit. Okay. I think we're good to go.
Cool.
So I just playtest the game for like one session in like 15 minutes and died. Like I said, I died at playing.
That's pretty good for 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's just jump into the discussion. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So can you give us some like general insights on the game design of Overland and like what was the origin, what was the history of the development process, and how long has it been, and like what's the progress right now?
Yeah, sure thing. If I forget any of those, don't feel just ask again.
Okay.
So we started in late 2013 with just sort of I think it was almost like a joke on Twitter or something, but I wanted to, it was one of those things like you take a shower and you have an idea, and the idea was, what if you tried to make something, make like a squad-based strategy game, something like an XCOM or something like that, but have it play out on a really small play space, kind of like a 868 hack, or almost like a squad-based thing that was made for mobile or something like that. And it wasn't that that idea all by itself was really exciting or something like that, but I didn't understand all the implications of it right away. I felt like it brought up a lot of questions. It's like, oh, well, how do you stop somebody from feeling overwhelmed, and how do you cram enough interesting stuff into that little small space, and how do you help people make a connection with their little characters, and do we need to have base building, or like it felt like there was all these questions and I didn't know the answers to any of them. And usually for me that's, I guess, like a sign that maybe we found something cool or something worth exploring. Like if I have an idea and I'm like, oh, that idea works, that thing plugs into that thing, that's just like that game, and then usually I'm not that into it. So
Sorry, Adam. Sorry, Adam. Do you hear the noise yourself? There's a noise when you're talking. Do you hear it?
Does it sound like? What does it sound like?
It's like zzz, just a buzzing whenever you talk.
Oh, it might be like the outdoor. Let me close the office window real quick. It might
Okay.
actually be like the outdoor insects. Hang on.
Okay.
All right, there we go.
Yeah. That's a lot better.
Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So you mentioned about there is this interesting idea you want to explore, but do you draw any inspirations from? Do you have any anything kicked off the Yeah. So can you give us?
Yeah, the very first thing was really just like a pure gameplay thing. It was really just, what if we tried to make a game that played a lot like, there's a mobile game, I think it's on Steam now, called 868 Hack, which is this really elegant roguelike game by, originally from New Zealand, but now British or based in Portugal now maybe, but a guy named Michael Bro.
Yeah, Michael Bro.
He creates lots of different roguelike games, and 868 was a really, I don't know, it was a game I was playing a lot because I think it's really elegant and really intelligent about a lot of things. But a lot like a traditional roguelike, you only have one little character. So it's randomly generated levels, but they're very small. They're like 6 by 6. You have one little character that goes along and has really simple inputs and simple controls. And but it produces all of these, it's almost like a puzzle generator more than a normal roguelike game. You're constantly being put in a position where you're like, well, I've got 1 point here and 1 point of this resource, and how do I spend them to kind of get out of the little sort of corner I backed myself into. And I really like that, but I couldn't stop thinking about like, well, what if you had like a little crew, instead of like a little avatar, you had like a little crew of like survival story, kind of almost like trope characters initially. It was like, what if there's a police officer and a doctor and an Air Force pilot and something else? And what would their interactions be? And like, would they have different abilities that were related to their sort of costumes or jobs? And sort of the way that you do in a game like XCOM, you have like a sniper and a demolitions expert and and whoever else. But what if I like the idea of taking some of those strategy game things, but trying to put them in something that would feel more accessible or more familiar to people. So put it in more of like initially it was going to be like a zombie type setting.
Okay.
Like end of the world, and there's zombies, and you're in these little, like you can see like one square of the town at a time, and you're like trying to maybe collect supplies or something. I couldn't figure out like all the things about how it would work exactly. So we started making a little digital prototype. We made like an iPad prototype initially that had controls that were really directly inspired by 868 Hack. So swipe right to move right and swipe left to move left. And then there was a little list of your characters over on one side of the screen. You could change characters that way. And it was pretty neat already, but it was also like a disaster.
Okay.
Like it wasn't really fun to play right away, because it was sort of like, well, okay, you're here and there's some monsters and you fight the monsters and either you die and you get game over, or you beat the monsters and you get the treasure and you get to go to the next room. And a lot of games are built that way, but a lot of the games also play out in a much larger space physically, and they have all of these other stats and things. And I think we had decided pretty early on that we weren't going to have, like a tech tree or experience points.
You don't want to be a like a strategy RPG or something.
Yeah, and part of that was just like it felt like too huge of a game, and we just weren't a very big team. And now we've made a huge game that's like a 3D and it's taken forever, so that didn't really work. But it was like even then we knew like if we go down that road, it's going to be a disaster, and I'm gonna be in spreadsheets and balancing all these player abilities, and and it's just going to be a mess. So.
Yeah, please. Sorry. Just real quick, I want to ask my audience about the translation stuff. 有没有人需要简单翻译的？还是你们觉得他的讲话声音讲话的速度 OK？ 可以吧？好，那我就不翻了。OK, yeah, everybody is fine.
Okay, cool. But like right away it was like, we got rid of all the experience points and all the player stats and special abilities and stuff, and we got rid of the big physical level space, and now what's left isn't really a game exactly.
Yeah.
You've got your little characters and you're on this little chessboard and there's little enemies, but like that's kind of it. And so I feel like that first pass was like very mechanical, but then we started thinking about like almost more like story stuff, like what are situations that would be might be fun if you were the player, you would want to be in this situation. So maybe so-and-so's trapped and you want to rescue them. We're actually thinking a lot about the old Valve multiplayer game, Left 4 Dead.
Okay.
Where you play as a team, sort of a cooperative team of humans against a big zombie horde or whatever. But you have, most of Left 4 Dead is shooting zombies in the face. But there are a couple of things that you can do outside of that, where someone on your team can get knocked down, you have to run over and help them get back up, or you can, collect and share health packs or pills or whatever. And we started thinking about those things and really liking those things, but also thinking about things from other games, like Far Cry 2 and some other things. And so we started sort of throwing in a couple of new things, like, oh, what if there's fire, and a fire could start, and then it would spread to squares around it, and that'd be a cool way for, we have a very, very small level, but if parts of the level can change while you're playing, then even though it's small, it still has variety, and it's still producing kind of a surprise or a challenge. And we liked that a lot. And we'll put in med kits and we'll put in some other things. So one of the things that went in really early there were character classes back then. There was a carpenter or a defensive class that could build wooden barricades.
Oh, okay.
So we thought, instead of being an attacker, they could build these wooden barricades. They would take up a tile. That'd be a way for you as the player to proactively change the level. And they're made out of wood, so they can catch on fire. And how that interacts with the fire system, we're like, oh, this is cool, this is going somewhere. So it started to feel like, what if it actually was really not like a strategy combat thing first and foremost, but instead it was like a survival thing. And you're actually mostly running away from things or collecting things. And running away from things is like a pet video game interest of mine. And that sort of feels cool. But there was a huge problem still, which was if you go to a level and there's like 3 bad guys, it would be a really tense, challenging level. You'd be like, okay, so-and-so, you go over here and hit that one with a stick, and you go over here and barricade him in, and we're barely gonna escape. But if there was 4, if all the levels have the same challenge, then we were really struggling to imagine what it would be like to sit down and play the game for more than 10 minutes or something.
Okay.
Because every level would be the same in a way. Mm-hmm. We'd have a little variety. Sometimes it'd be like, oh, you need to go rescue someone or something. But if you had 4 bad guys, the level was impossible. Mm-hmm. If there was only 2 bad guys, then the level was boring and too easy. And that was the best and worst part of the early iPad prototype, because we had to actually sit down. We were actually really, really stuck. We're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix this. Everything else feels like it's panning out. And we solved a couple of things that were tricky, and we got a couple of things for free. But what do we do about this thing? And the mechanic that you can see in the game now, where when you attack and kill a monster, make loud sounds, reinforcements start to kind of pop up through the ground.
Yeah.
That ended up being our answer to that problem. And it's one of the pieces of the design that I like a lot. Not everybody likes it. Some people think it makes the game very oppressive or too challenging or whatever, but I really liked how it put the difficulty a little bit more in the player's hands, which is something that 868 Hack does just a really, really good job of. You can kind of carefully sneak through 868 Hack and finish the game without really scoring a lot of points. Mm-hmm. or doing anything particularly dangerous, but the goal is to really score a ton of points. And the trick was in Overland trying to figure out, because we don't really have a high score exactly, but how do we produce that kind of feeling that like letting players who want to take more risks and get rewards from that somehow, which is where a lot of the way later on, a lot of the structure about, it's all about collecting fuel, and it's about taking risks to collect as much fuel as you can in one place before you move on to the next place, and so on and so forth. That's kind of a way of getting that stuff back, and this mechanic of the noise that you choose to make as a player being the thing that causes more reinforcements to show up seem to fit in with all that stuff.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that is also what my impression of the game too. It's like I actually finished all the way to the mountains yesterday, and I find out that was my most successful run, and basically what I did was just do the bare minimum that I need to like pass one map to another, and sometimes I just drop one teammates, or sometimes I even don't collect like too much fuel. Like I just need, okay, I can make to the next map, then that's enough.
Yeah. I think that's a good place. One of the tricky things I think going forward with the design that we've been dealing with for the last 6 months or so is always trying to hint to players that there is maybe another way of doing it. Like trying to get a player, trying to get someone from like they've never played the game before to, oh crap, if I do anything it makes noise and that's bad.
Yeah.
Getting them over that hump to like, oh well, I do have to make some noise, but here are the ways that I can mitigate the effects of that. To, I'm just gonna, collect what I need for now. I'm just gonna like optimize for the short term and not care about the long-term investment. And then eventually later, starting to kind of turn the screws and start to get reminders in for like, well, you really should be thinking about the long term, because if you collect this thing and this thing, by the time you get here, you can carry more items, and this will let you meet more people faster, and you can get this car that has this kind of special upgrade. So, because we don't have tutorials or anything like that in the game, so like trying to figure out like what are the little sort of like clues or things that you can leave laying around where when people find it, they'll start to get their own idea of like a good experiment to try next time they play. That's kind of just a constant challenge with it.
Yeah, but I mean, some of the items or some of the things you see later on, they are sort of harder to experiment on, because every time you die, you have to like go back all the way to the west, to the east coast.
Yeah, that's
I find out the things that I found out the radios are really, really cool.
Oh yes, yeah. It's always like a tricky balance, because like I don't want.
Do you think it's too powerful? It's like, the radio. Yeah, the radio is like you can put. Maybe I think maybe in my run that radio is like. Just happened to be found in a very lucky position, and I was just very lucky to have a person there and pick it up and relatively easily to like put it onto a hill on the side, and all the enemies just like being sucked to that spot, and I think that was the most difficult level in the mountains, but somehow I just had that radio and I got through it.
Yeah, I actually don't know if it's overpowered or not. I've been trying a couple. There's been like 3 or 4 different kind of basic rule sets for it. A lot of it is weird, like because they're making like a 3D looking strategy game, but a lot of our other inspiration over the last year or two has been coming from board games. And so like in our heads, like we think of a lot of the things in the game as things that would, be on a card. And like, what would you put on a card? What would you write on a card to make it easy to understand? And like, how can we simplify the design of this item or this item in a way that even if you didn't know what it did before, after you tried it, you would have a really clear idea or something like that. And there's been like 4 or 5 different cards for the radio over the last 6 months. We even changed it during the alpha once already, where like so many things like this is kind of like the ongoing design challenge in Overland is, the level you're on is 9 by 9, and most of the humans and cars have 2 hit points each, and most of the items have 1 or 2 hit points each, and most of the monsters have 1 or 2 hit points. So like, if we want to make something a little bit stronger or a little bit weaker, we can't actually change most of their normal properties.
Okay.
So if you say like, we want to make this monster a little bit weaker, if we take away 1 of its hit points, it might not have any hit points left.
Okay.
Or it might suddenly be half as strong as it used to be. And it's made the radio like exceptionally weird to try to change the rules around it. Because we're like, what if, each time you turn it on, we treat it like it has a battery, and so each time you turn it on, it uses up 1 of its things. But then that got weird. It made you like afraid to turn on the radio ever. And that wasn't very fun. So I think the current version, we're back to one of the older radio rule sets, which is when you turn it on, it acts like a very powerful bait almost to attract all the monsters to it, but it also makes noise of its own and causes new monsters to appear at a faster rate than they would otherwise. And if you're on a more difficult level, especially like a roadblock level or an out of gas level, they'll actually come through the ground even faster in those places, just because of the gameplay rules in those places. And that feels closer to, I don't even know if it's balanced necessarily, but it does feel closer to the kinds of things that seem to work for Overland specifically.
I see.
Which is like anything that can, it's okay if something, like the general Overland rule is it's okay if it's powerful as long as it causes the overall level of chaos in the level to go up.
Okay. Okay.
So like if it can make everything worse, that just needs to be mostly proportional to how good the item is.
I see.
So like we've been thinking, because sometimes people ask like, well, are you gonna put in guns? And like I don't think I've ever shipped a game that had guns in it ever. But we've been thinking about doing it in Overland. So we're like, well, what if you could find a gun, but only had 1 bullet in it? You can kill anything in 1 shot, but it'll be so loud that creatures will climb up to the ground on like every side of the whole level at once.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't know, I kind of like that. Maybe we should do that.
But you have flare right now.
Yeah, we do have flare gun, but that at least starts a fire wherever it hits.
Okay.
Which in some levels can, it depends on the level, but
yeah, some levels will burn the grass or something.
Yeah, it can cause a pretty decent amount of chaos if we need it to.
So how complete is the game right now? Do you think?
I think internally we've been talking about it different ways, because so much of I think when you do exploratory or experimental gameplay, when Overland's obviously inspired by a lot of different board games and other video games, but it also, I don't think of it as being in a very specific genre or being like a clone of another game or anything. So we've been working on it on and off since late 2013, but it's really only in the last, about the last year that most of the way that the game is balanced and the new character designs and our the way the UI is going to look when we ship, and the way that most of the player interaction works. Like most of that stuff has come together in about the last year. We had a lot of the basic gameplay stuff designed long before that, but I think of the game as being about 60% done.
Okay.
I really hope that doesn't mean that we have 2 years left
Okay.
to finish it, because so much of the last 2.5 years was spent doing experiments, throwing things out, building up a feature and then having to just delete it all. Last November, I had a 48-hour coding sprint where I deleted like 2,000 lines of code.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of stuff that's gotten tossed out, but I think we're about 60%. I think we'll be pretty much around 80% by the end of the year.
Okay. So.
And then yeah.
So the mountain is the third area, right? So after the mountains, will there be like 1, 2 more?
Yeah, the full spread is, it's a little bit weird because in the levels that are in the current version are actually levels 2, 3, and 4.
Oh, okay.
So there's going to be a new level 1, hopefully by the end of October.
So you want to put in the sort of the tutorial levels last.
We just figured out there's an environmental, there's like a, it's almost more of like a visual thing.
Okay.
Like the way that the levels are themed, it's gonna be a nightmare because I'm gonna have to go through and like redo all the balancing and all the difficulty on every place you can go in the whole game right now. But yeah, it's mostly a visual thing, and for narrative and pacing and stuff, the first tutorial area, instead of being like in the greenish brownish area that we call woodlands, it needs to be in a more urban area, I think,
Okay.
with like broken down buildings and stuff. There's a bunch of reasons for that. Some of them are like because of the lore, and some of them are just for making a connection with players. But it's going to start in a kind of a wrecked city type environment, and then it'll go to the current level 1, but that'll be a full-length biome. So we're like right now when you go to the woodlands, and it's that first map only has like 2 or 3 stops on it.
Yeah.
The wrecked city is going to have the 2 or 3 stops. The woodlands is going to get blown up into a full-length thing. Then you'll go into the grasslands like it does now, or the plains. And then there'll be the mountains, and then there'll be the desert, and then there are 2 places after that, but we're not saying what those are yet.
Okay.
But it's where all the weird things that you see on the road trip, they all come from the place where you're going.
So you'll know why there are floating rocks.
I don't think you'll know why, but floating rocks will be like the least weird thing that
Okay.
you will see by the time you get there.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to sort of change the topic a little bit. Like up until now, we've talked about the design or some of the inspirations of Overland. I think during the preparation of this session, some of my dear friends suggested a few questions to me, and I think one or two of them are like, I want to ask them as well, so I'll just do that right now. Like, Overland is like a lot bigger than almost all of your other games, right? And,
Combined.
yeah, and so you also changed from using your own engine, Flixel, to now you're using Unity. Yeah, so what was the decision making like? Why do you want to like not keep developing Flixel, or like do you find any interesting thing you want to say when you sort of changed from your own engine to Unity 3D? Like, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So before Flixel, I worked in a lot of different frameworks, and like Flixel's weird too, right? Because it's like a game engine that's already sitting on top of another piece of technology.
Yeah.
It's kind of like sitting on top of Flash, and it relies on Flash a lot. And it was really, Flixel was really purpose-built for me initially. The whole goal of Flixel was just, I really badly wanted to rapidly prototype 2D games, and it was so hard for me to do that and to produce something that was shareable and that could run on different operating systems. Obviously, Unity wasn't really around much when I was building Flixel initially. And Flixel was based on work that I'd done in Silverlight, and before that in C++ with Python and OpenGL. But the thing that happened specifically with Overland, though, is we had released some mobile games, and we had gone through kind of a bad breakup with our partner in our old mobile games company.
Oh, okay.
But we've been doing a lot of contract work, and the contract work paid really well, and we found ourselves in a place where we had money laying around that we could invest in projects. And so we actually invested a bunch of money in some Double Fine games. Space-based DF9 and Hack and Slash.
Okay.
So we helped fund those. We teamed up with some other indie developers and helped fund those games. And
you
then,
mean with Indie Fund? The Indie
yeah.
Fund? Okay.
Yeah. So we did that, and we were like, oh, that was weird and interesting, and we learned some stuff. But then we started kind of thinking about like, well, you know, we kind of fell into making mobile games back in 2008. We made one as a side project, and it was kind of a big hit. And then Cannonball a year later was, I mean, definitely a bigger hit online, but it was big enough mobile that we got to do more mobile stuff. And I felt like we never really thought about it. So at some point, my wife Beck and I, who run our company together, kind of sat down and tried to, I don't know, we just had this like weird moment where like, it was fun in investing in someone else's project. What if we invested in our own project? Which isn't really anything we've consciously done before. Like our previous system of making games was mostly like, hey, we have enough money for food this month? Cool, I'm gonna mess around on the computer, maybe make a game that's fun. Oh crap, it didn't work. I better go get a job. Like that was our actual like system of production for like 5 years or something.
Okay.
But we were, I don't know, we had 2 kids by this point, and like a house and a house payment and like a bunch of like kind of grown-up stuff basically. And yes, we just started, it started as kind of as like a lot of things do for us. It was kind of like initially not very serious question. We're just like, well, we should invest in our company. We're awesome. We're not going to invest in those guys' companies. And then that kind of turned into a more serious question. We're like, well, what does that look like? How much money do we set aside? Or like, are we talking about, you know, spending a lot of money trying to make a new game? Because if we are, we probably need to think pretty hard about what platforms is this game going to run on? You know, a problem we had with our last big mobile game, which was called Hundreds, which was a really great design experience. We were specifically designing games around the iPad and around multi-touch, which meant that we couldn't release the game on almost any other platform.
Yeah.
It could run on large form factor touchscreens that support multi-touch, and that's it. And as a company or a business or whatever, that ended up, you know, it did okay commercially as a project or whatever, but it felt like it felt like it was trapped and we couldn't put it on other platforms where it could find a new audience. So that was part of our math too. We're like, well, we should, if we're going to, invest a bunch of our money in a new project, and we're going to try to make something bigger on purpose. We've got to try to make something that can be multi-platform. We have to try to make something that we think might appeal to like a computer gamer audience and maybe even a console audience. And what does that mean? And we didn't know, so we just didn't do anything about it for a while. And then independently, we were like, hey, we should make a mobile version of XCOM or whatever. And started actually building that prototype, and eventually we started looking at like, that prototype has strategy game elements, it has survival game elements. We think that maybe that's the thing we should invest in. Like if we're going to invest in a game, maybe that's the one that we should pick. That was over 2.5 years ago. Where we had originally planned to ship it at least a year ago.
Yeah, it happens to everyone.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, we thought we were like really cool because we'd made lots of games before and we shipped lots of projects before, and yeah, I've just been so underprepared for what we got into this time. But as far as Unity goes, I have been working in it a little bit. We had collaborated on some Unity projects before, and it seemed basically fine. And there are things that it does like so extremely well that like Flixel just cannot possibly do that I think are really cool. There are other places where I feel like the promise of Unity, or the I can almost think of it as like the fantasy of Unity, like what Unity kind of, to me, has always presented itself as doing or as being good at. I feel like in a lot of ways it maybe falls a little bit short. Like the way that Unity exposes a lot of variables to the user, and you can change values in real time to rapidly find the right feeling for your game or whatever. I feel like that fantasy in a lot of ways falls short, because even when that's true, it's actually really difficult it's just as difficult as it would be on any other platform if you want to change the logic of what's happening.
Yeah.
If you say like, the basic relationship between these parts of the game is wrong, and what if it was like this? That's still a, stop the game, go back in, change the code, start it up again, run it again. But the places where it's been just a massive help on Overland are that it runs pretty well on PC and Mac. That's huge. The fact that we can use the Unity editor a little bit like a level editor especially for the Overland levels that are a little bit more hand designed or have a little bit more human input and aren't quite as randomly generated or whatever. That's awesome. Like, I can't imagine what it'd be to have to stop and build a level editor from scratch, especially, and then all of just the fact that it's a competent 3D engine. I don't know. I honestly don't know enough about modern 3D programming to say for sure if it's like great or if it has bad ideas or good ideas or anything like that. But for what we're doing, it's more than adequate. And we at one point tried to do the math of like, what if we had to hire somebody to build us a multi-platform game engine that could do 3D animation and all of those things? And I think it would be pricey.
Yeah.
It would have really messed up our budget. So Unity's great for that. Is Unreal probably just as good? I think so. But I'm just not sure. I think it was mostly like, well, I've used Unity 5 or 10 times before in a part-time capacity, so maybe if we adopt it in a more full-time capacity, that'll save us some headaches. And Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Like, I feel like the longer we work on this project, the more likely it is that we could have started on anything and it just wouldn't have mattered that much.
I see. So did
Yeah.
any of the like the implementation side of Overland actually like is affected by this? Like, during your process, did you have any? I mean, during your process, do you ever see Overland being built as a 2D game, like isometric 2D?
Yeah, we talked about it a lot. I think it at some point, for better or for worse, I think we just kind of probably mostly me, but I kind of more or less decided like, no, we should like
do a real 3D
we should
game.
go kind of like, yeah, let's just try it. And you know, the worst case scenario would always be, crap, it's not working. Let's bail, let's just go back to 2D, because we had the original prototype was 2D. We knew a lot of the gameplay would work pretty well in 2D.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple of like overarching design concerns. You know, we knew that on some level we were making a strategy game. It was going to have some, you know, strategy games always have some amount of user interface. There's always some stats somewhere. There's information about things somewhere. There's always things kind of floating around the screen. And, you know, I think we knew pretty early on that it, for several reasons, that it couldn't really be quite as simplified as a normal mobile game. We couldn't strip it all the way down, and that if it was 2D and we were trying to put it on consoles or on computers, that there would be other challenges that would come along with that. There would be probably some marketing challenges, and there would be some design challenges with like, how do we get all of this, all of these details. You know, we're probably going to need the camera to zoom in and out, and what does that mean for the 2D art style and the way everything's presented?
Oh, okay.
And we had some early mock-ups that were 2D, and our art director Heather Penn, a lot of her background is in 2D art, so we talked about that some. And again, yeah, the initial prototype was all 2D, but I think the other thing that happened is relatively quickly after we brought Heather onto the project, which was about 6 months after we started doing the prototype, so in the middle of 2014, we hired an audio director and an art director to start formally like contributing to the game. And when Heather started working on the project, it wasn't very long until she kind of mocked up. We've been talking about like, well, how big are the levels and what should they look like, and you know, should we just make everything look like Hitman Go, or you know, like how are we going to tackle this? How are we approaching this? What platforms is it going to be on? And somewhere in the middle there, Heather made this piece of concept art or key art where she sort of, with a mix of 3D models and Photoshop, sort of mocked up. She's like, well, what if, you know, here's kind of the vibe I've been thinking about in my head. There's a little bit of a road here. There's some big rocky growths here. Everything's got this little bit of texture on it, and the people are kind of small and dark. And this is, you know, what do you think about this? And it was like the coolest thing I've ever seen. I think right about then it was just like, okay, I think it pretty much has to be 3D because we have to do this. It has to be able to look like this.
Okay, got it.
So it was a little bit design, it was a little bit marketing, it was a little bit just selfish, like, it looks so cool if we could pull it off.
Okay, got it. So it's like an ambition when you saw that concept art. You want to... Yeah,
and you know, the practical or marketing side of it is something that we took really seriously too. I think, like when we saw the screenshot or the mock-up or whatever, we sort of looked at it and we're like, if somebody saw this, I think they would be jazzed. They would want to know more, like they would want to see what this was. And if we made most of this game just look like that, then maybe we wouldn't have as much marketing work to do later. We wouldn't have to figure out how do you convince somebody that this game is cool. Like, you could just take a screenshot of it and people would think it was cool. Well, like, and that would solve a lot of our problems. It would just be like 10,000 times more work, you know, before we get there.
Got it.
But it appealed to us that it was like, it seemed like it would make the game more special in some way, but that then also, because it was doing that, it might mean that other people would kind of be drawn to it as well.
Okay. So, do you mind if I starting to taking questions from the audience right now?
No, that's perfect. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, 有没有任何人有先准备好问题想要问的 ？Okay. Okay. There's. If you cannot hear him talking, just give it a sign or something.
Hello. Hi, Adam. Thank you for writing the article about indie parents. I have two kids as well. It's a very important issue that game developers should think about it. And so thank you. And my question is that I just finished a 2-year project months ago, and we got a little bit success. That means we can just break even. But I can't find a new project to work right now because I know it's very hard to just break even. So I want to try to find a better concept or easier concept or a better game to work. So it's been about a month and I still can't find a cool concept. So do you have any thoughts on this one and how to break through? Thank you.
Oh yeah, that is a super good question. I wish I had like a really good answer, like, you know, go for a walk in your favorite forest and then, you know, you'll have a cool idea and then you can do the thing. But like, honestly, like at this point, I don't know. I would take this with a grain of salt. Like this is just going to be like my experience with, you know, creativity and ideas and projects and all of those things. But I feel like, and I know there are other designers who are kind of in my boat as well. But I think I probably about 1 out of every 10 ideas, maybe there's something to it. Like a lot of them are just bad. And when you are in a place where you're hitting a lot of those in a row, it's just really frustrating. But it just kind of has to happen. Like the number of things that are in Overland that are from like 4 different prototypes that we had to bury, like one of which we worked on for a long time, is not insignificant. Like there's definitely, you know, big chunks of Overland where I'm like, oh, that thing from that other thing that I never got to do, we can put it right in here and it'll work like this. And I know because we already like ferreted out that problem in that game, you know, we had one prototype that we worked on for 9 months and then just killed it. And that was awful. Because that was a much smaller game than Overland, so it would have been really nice if that was the one that was turning out really good, because we would have been done with it a long time ago. But I learned a bunch of weird things about, I guess, puzzle games or grid-based games, and about randomly generated scenarios, and about player attention, about how you can have, you know, you look at a chessboard, and a chessboard has 32 pieces on it, which is a lot of stuff to keep track of. Except, in some ways, there's only like 7 pieces. There's like pawns, rooks, knights, bishops, kings, queens, whatever. There's like 5 or 6 pieces, and there are lots of each of them on the board. You know, there's a whole bunch of pawns, but your brain can like bundle that stuff up and like handle it. Whereas if there were 32 chess pieces and every single one was different and had different properties, and there are chess variants that work like that. And they're all crazy. They're awesome, but they're insane. They're like, instead of pawns, you have like giraffe, rhinoceros, helicopter, like, and they all have weird stuff going on, right? And that's cool, and that's a different game, but it's really hard for mainstream players to deal with that, I think. And that's something that has informed an enormous amount of how level generation works in Overland, and how I'm handling level generation on other projects, and that's all from something that we canceled. And it's just been like the biggest help. So I kind of feel like, you know, part of the process of making things and of coming up with a new idea and coming up with a new concept, part of that is just dead ends. Like there's going to be a bunch of them. Part of it is learning to, I'm hopeful that, you know, as designers or whatever, we can start to, over time, learn to at least recognize the things that we actually do like in an idea, or recognize the things that show promise. Like a huge thing about the Overland project for me was realizing that the only way that I stay motivated on a long project is if there are unanswered questions. If there are aspects of the design that I don't fully understand, that's almost the only thing that keeps me motivated to keep exploring it and keep pulling it apart and keep pushing the design forward. And so I'm hopeful that in the future, when we're brainstorming and trying to figure out what to work on next, that's a question that I will be able to ask of an idea that we have. People will be able to say like, well, what if there's a game like so-and-so? Or a game that works like this. And if when we're talking through the idea, I don't really know where it leads and I don't know how to solve all the problems, for me that's a good sign that, oh, like, maybe this is something that is worth following, because if I can't figure out how it's going to work and how all the pieces fit together, and that's a mystery that I find attractive, maybe for other people that will be an attractive mystery too, and maybe that's a good sign. But you know, beyond that, I think it's mostly just like a kind of keep trying things, and obviously, you know, try out other people's stuff. Like a big place where inspiration has come for me in the past is playing a game and having it not work the way that I thought. So someone will describe the game to me, or I'll play the demo and I'll be like, oh, somebody made a game about this. And then I sit down and play the actual game for a while, and it's not like that at all. It doesn't do what I thought it would at all. And I'm really disappointed, and sometimes disappointed enough to just sit down and start making something that actually works the way I thought this thing would work. And I know that's where Cannibal came from, and I think that's where Spell Tower came from also. Like, sort of frustration or disappointment, or just simply seeing something unexpected, I know, is a thing that is sometimes produced surprisingly good ideas in the past.
I see.
Misunderstandings. Be wrong about a thing. That's my design advice.
What was the disappointment that inspired Cannibal?
I played the first Mirror's Edge game.
Oh.
When I originally played it, it just wasn't what I thought. Like, I get that it has merits and that there are really progressive design elements in that game, but the way they came together was just not the thing that I had built up in my head. But I also had a team of like one person in like 5 days. So Cannibal was kind of the only thing. I was just like, I went through and through. I was like, well, okay, there's not going to be any parkour. There's not going to be any of this. And there's not going to be any of this. But the only thing that won't happen is I'm not going to interrupt your flow. I'm not going to put the player in a situation where they're constantly getting slowed down by things. Like you're just going to be going faster and faster, and you're going to feel like you're flying. Or like, you guys ever had that dream where like you're almost falling down, like you're walking and you trip and you almost fall, but you're kind of like almost falling forever? You're like always constantly catching yourself, but you can never get your balance. Maybe that's like a weird dream. I don't know.
You're watching too much Inception.
Right. I wanted that feeling. That's what I in my head. That's what Mirror's Edge was going to be like. Was just always just barely somehow at the last moment, kind of making things connect and getting from A to B. But yeah, it was a lot more like tripping over handrails and falling to your death for the like 50th time.
OK, any other？ 有没有其他人想要发问？中文也可以问，我可以简单帮你翻译。如果没有的话，我先继续问我的问题。Yeah, sorry. So I think some of them needs to form their questions in their mind for a second, and yeah. I'll continue with mine. Yeah, I have a list of things. Yeah, so I am a little bit interested in your sort of publishing and collaboration with other indies, like because we always saw a lot of Western indies who have made maybe a few or maybe a series of like successful hits, and they are famous for those hits, but they are only maybe I think a handful or a very few people who have like doing things very collaboratively and maybe do indie publishing with their friends. Like how do you collaborate with your indie developer friends on these kind of things?
For us so far, it's been really, it's almost like it's been different on every game. We think of, I would say like the two approaches that I like the best are what we're doing with Overland and Night in the Woods, where Overland is collaborative in the way that it's sort of an internal Finji project in a way, but also most of the team are not employees. I mean, depending on how you count our team, it could be 7 or 8 people, and a lot of them are part-time, but they're all over the place. We're in New York, LA, Austin, Michigan, and if you count HIO, we're also in San Francisco and Paris. Like, there's a whole bunch of people that are kind of like coming together to make this thing happen, and we're trying to, like, it's important to me that if we're working with other intelligent people that it's not just me telling them what to do, that they get to put their own kind of stamp on it and they get to contribute, because a lot of them are just, like, the reason we're working with them, I've learned over the years, like, if you hire someone or you team up with someone just because you need more of yourself. For example, Overland used to have another programmer on it because I didn't have enough time to do the programming myself. And I thought, like, I just need another programmer. It doesn't matter if they're the best programmer in the world. Like, that's not what this is all about. We need a good collaborator and someone who can help us make this happen. But what I ended up finding is that I feel like I was really dissatisfied with their contributions because I felt like they weren't as good as I would do. Whereas with most of our team, they're much, much better at me at everything that they do. Everything that they're doing on the project, they are the things that my wife Becca does on the project, like working with Sony and Microsoft and submitting to award shows and doing all of our paperwork and making sure the team gets paid and that we have a budget to do all this stuff. She's way better at this stuff than I am. We have a PR guy who's been helping us out since February. He's doing such a better job of this stuff than I would do. Obviously, our director is way better at making everything than I am, and it turns out she's actually a really good UI designer too. And so she's been stepping up and taking over a lot of that stuff. And sometimes it bugs me a little bit because I feel like, I've done UI design for 10 years. I think I know what I'm talking about, but her ideas are better. So it's just making the game better, and that's kind of all I care about. Like, I'd like to be right all the time too. That would be cool, but I'm not, and it's turning the game great. So I really like that collaborative process a lot, and it lets us support other people, and it lets them come in, and we get to work with them, and we get to be friends with them, and we get to make a cool thing together, and I think that's really cool. The other model that we do is, that I think we do relatively well, is what we're doing with Night in the Woods. And that is the bigger experiment. Like, I'm relatively confident that within a couple of years we'll be able to do it like Overland, hopefully a little smaller. But a project that's structured like that, where the team works together like that. Night in the Woods is the bigger experiment where Beck and I are in many ways kind of just overseeing and assisting a completely separate creative team that we have a lot of trust in. So the programmer is in Winnipeg, and the artist and the writer are in Pennsylvania. So one team is 10 hours drive one way from us, and the other team is 15 hours drive the other way. And the audio team is in Vancouver, so they're on the other side of the continent. And we have almost no input. There's no part of Night in the Woods except for one teeny little corner where we've played through and then been like, hey guys, you really got to change this, or this to be this way. And the game isn't the kind of game that we would make because it doesn't play to our strengths. But we have still been able to be helpful because, making a commercial game is unfortunately like a business decision as well as a creative decision. And so we have this amazing creative team who doesn't necessarily, I don't know if any of them want to start a new game studio, or maybe they already have one. They just want to make this game together. And they're from all over the place, but they are going to make this thing. And it's kind of like they're just making it under our umbrella or under our protection or something. So we've been able to help make sure that they can all pay their bills while they do this project. And if there's a communication problem between team members, or there is a workflow problem, or we've been producing levels this way, but it's taking a long time, or we're starting to get worried about the schedule. Those are places where, because we have some game development experience, we have some Unity experience, there are places where we can step in and we can talk to people. We can be like an objective kind of outside opinion when they need it. There's all these little bits and pieces that we can do in addition to all of the normal business stuff of making sure they have contracts for everyone that works on the game, and that they file for the copyrights and trademarks, and that they pay their taxes, and that the people that invest in our projects and help make them happen, that somebody's keeping them up to date and helping them understand where we are in the project, and that we're keeping everyone at Sony up to date on what's happening and when's the next thing done, and the people who are making the PlayStation 4 version, what do they need to do next, and what files do they need from the team and when, and all of that stuff. That's all stuff that we have to do for our projects anyway. And doing it for another project is extra work, but I mean, we end up feeling like their game just wouldn't come out if somebody wasn't there kind of doing some of the boring stuff. And I don't know, it's pretty nice sometimes to just get to do the boring stuff, not have to have all the, a lot of Overland is development time where you're going like, well, if I made the wrong decision about what's fun, we all go broke. Like having a little break from that sometimes, like, and just being able to go like, yeah, I emailed the guy and, you gotta send us this Photoshop file. And like knowing like that helps, you are helping, you are solving a problem for somebody. That's kind of nice. And I think, a game like Night in the Woods, I think is so, just nice. It's so cool looking. It's such an interesting, game to be involved with that, I think it makes our sort of studio or our business project, I think we look cooler for working on it. And, we get to help make sure that it actually comes out. And I feel like those two things work together really well.
Okay.
And we got to be involved really early on too. Mm-hmm. I think that helps a lot.
Okay. So, but
instead of just us coming in at the end.
But you are doing your own development, internal developments, and you are also helping, all these so-called boring stuff with other teams. I mean, how do you actually find time to do like everything?
Well, we don't get as much sleep as we used to.
Okay.
We don't watch a lot of TV or anything. I don't know, like sometimes it's like some weeks it just doesn't work super well. Some weeks
you go out and play Pokemon Go.
I don't. My wife Becca is level 14. So
okay.
Kids are definitely in the Pokemon Go, but
okay.
No, it's like mostly it's been really hard. I think once our kids are back in school, because there's two of us, because there's Becca and me, that producing a project internally and helping to produce an external project, doing that at the same time, I don't think is that crazy of an idea. I think one thing that has made Overland and Night in the Woods difficult is they have been pretty close to on the same schedule for a long time.
Okay.
Night in the Woods, I think their Kickstarter was originally announced about 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. We started working on Overland about 2.5 years ago, and Night in the Woods comes out this fall, and Overland's probably going to come out next summer. So those are probably, I feel like those are running slightly too close to each other to be really comfortable. Like if they were offset more,
okay,
and we were still at the beginning of Overland when we were finishing Night in the Woods or something, I think maybe in some ways that would be better, but in a lot of ways it feels like, not that we don't have a choice, but that, I don't know, I often feel like I don't have a lot of control over how cool a project is and when we notice it and when we start to get involved with it. Like a lot of these things are kind of circumstantial in a way, and I feel like Overland and Night in the Woods kind of came along around the same time, and our reaction was, these are both awesome, let's do it! And it's been really hard, but like, if I, like looking back even now, mm-hmm. at a time when I'm writing a lot of user interface code, and I'm like, it's just not the sexiest work time on Overland right now, and Night in the Woods is launching soon, and it's pretty stressful. Yeah. Like even now, if I got to pick, if I could say, well, what if we had time to watch more TV or catch more Pokemons? But we wouldn't get to be involved with one of these games. We'd have to drop one.
Okay.
Like I don't think I could do it.
But I mean,
I think they're just too cool.
Just asking a very objective question, like how how much work time do you have each week? Weekly hours.
It's getting up there. It's quite
60?
a lot. I would say. Some days I only work from about 8 or 9 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
That's at least some days each week. There's a few weeks where both Becca and I will work after the kids are in bed also and pick up an extra 3 or 4 hours there. And I'm getting better about it now, but there have been periods where I just would work full days on the weekends also.
Oh, okay.
But
So
that
that's
wasn't 100% the plan either. Like the plan with Overland was that because there'd be another programmer involved, that my schedule wouldn't be quite as heavily loaded as it is. But I don't know, plans change. So yeah, I would say it has been, let me see, I've probably been averaging like 60 or 70 hours a week for like a pretty long time. I wouldn't count all of that as crunch or anything like that, because a lot of that work is not very grindy. Like it's not like somebody's yelling at me like, hey, go edit this spreadsheet for 70 hours a week or you're gonna get fired. Like it's not that really, it's like a lot of it is better and worse. It's feeling like, well, the clock is ticking, this is our investment, this is our money and our time and our emotions and our family kind of on the line for this project, and we want to do right by it. We want to make something cool that when people play it, they will have a positive reaction and they'll notice the little details and they'll have this positive experience with it. And I feel a lot of a lot of motivation to I guess sacrifice some personal time for working on this project that I love and that kind of like we were talking about before, it has so many unanswered questions still.
Mm-hmm.
And I like spending my time kind of thinking about those questions and trying to crack them open and try to come up with something kind of cool and new. But at the same time, we got to go to the beach all day with my family, so that was pretty good too.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd say it's been longish hours for a while. I think once our kids are in school, and so we're being a little bit less full-time parents, our oldest will start kindergarten in September. So I think that'll take some of the burn off, and I think if we were a little bit luckier and Overland and Night in the Woods had been more staggered, they'd been more offset, then I think our schedules would be pretty different. But I don't know, we love these projects and we're so proud of everybody that's working on them that, I don't know, it's been a lot of work, but I don't mind a lot of it.
Okay, good for you. So let me ask if there are any new questions coming up. 有没有人有想要问新的问题？好，有个你摸下巴是要举手吗？好，那先好，后面请。
If you start a project and maybe you will think that it doesn't working, what will make you choice to maybe quit this process or just cut it off?
That is a good question. Usually it's not something I struggle with that much because I just get bored.
Okay.
And usually if I'm bored working on it, I just kill it because I don't know, I wish I had statistics where I could A/B test it and I could say well, one time I worked on a game and I was bored out of my mind and the game turned out bad, but on this game I really liked it and it turned out good. And I can't objectively say that that's true, but I feel especially if you are self-employed or you work for yourself or you're doing the indie game thing in general, if you're not excited about the project, I think it's going to be so hard to, it's going to require so much discipline just to sit down and make basic progress on it, that I feel like you're going to be missing out on so many weird opportunities. Like when you actually like the project and are fascinated by what you're building, it means that time spent not working on the project, that all that stuff is still back there, kind of like jumbling around in your brain, and like it'll be like 3 a.m. and you'll sit upright in bed and go, what if you could put this thing and the other thing and they're connected? And like make notes on your phone, and then the next morning the game is going to be even better. And I feel like on a project where you don't love it or you're not emotionally engaged in it, that maybe that process isn't going to happen or isn't going to happen as much. And I think it's going to kind of inevitably produce a game where maybe there's less interesting stuff going on. So I mean, I think if like getting bored of a project is a pretty good sign that maybe you should drop it. And I think I talked to a lot of people, and I used to be this way too, where I get bored of almost everything I was working on after like 2 weeks, and I used to feel really bad about that. Now I understand it's because it was a bad game. Like good, like it's good that I got bored of it. It's because it was boring. It's not a coincidence or anything. So I think that's a good sign. The things that are trickier than that are that game that we worked on for like 9 months before we canned it, which was a game that had, like, I wasn't really bored of it. Like, I was having fun working on it, and even after we killed it, I made a new version of it. Like, I started working on a Flash version of it, even though that game had been a Unity project. And that started to go somewhere, and then that version I had to abandon also. But that project was tricky because we had to actually, that was a game that I was working on with the programmer from Night in the Woods. And at some point, we both just had to get a little more realistic and look at this project that we've been working on for 9 months, and it still had fundamental problems. Like, we thought we had made the best version of it that we could, and after rebooting it like 4 times, and it still wasn't clicking. We would give it to players to play and be like, check it out now, it's so good, right? And they'd be like, what? I don't understand, this is fine, I guess, whatever. And we still don't got it, even though we thought we really had something special this time. And, but at the same time, we were both working on Night in the Woods and Overland, and it was clear that Night in the Woods was turning out to be pretty special, and that Overland had a little bit more going on with it than we thought it might at first. It was also turning into something pretty special, and so we just had to look at this thing that was being really stubborn. We thought that there were pieces like, oh, this piece and this piece and this piece are good. We just have to find how to put them together, but there was too much other good stuff going on, and so we kind of had to table it. Mm-hmm. And that just sucked. It just wasn't a fun decision to make. It was like, you do a lot of like, well, but I worked on it for so long, and like all that work is going to waste. But again, like that was the project that probably did the most to improve the level designs in Overland. So I don't know. Like everybody probably hears this advice about like, well, if there's something in your game, even if you really like it, if it's a bad fit for the game, you have to get rid of it. And so I think that's true for your project slate. Like you're working on a bunch of projects, and some of them aren't right for you, or they're not turning out. You kind of just have to get rid of them and focus on the stuff that is working and that does fit. But just don't throw it all the way out. Like keep it around somewhere just in case, because like it might be that 6 months later you'll go, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do with it, and then like now it's really cool. Or it might be that there's a big chunk of that you can kind of steal and use that to fix a bunch of other problems, and everybody's going to think you're so smart because you're going to have solutions that took 6 months to figure out, just like sitting there at your fingertips when the right problem comes along. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, there's probably like a more mature way of going about deciding, you know, vetting a project. I mean, there's the other thing is the basic kind of commercial or practical aspect, especially if your project is intended to be an indie game that you sell somewhere. I think it is good to pretty early on think about, and it's really hard to do this effectively, but it's still worth trying, which is to think about kind of the financial or the commercial potential for a project. You know, even if you have something that you personally are fascinated by and that you want to explore and you are enjoying the process of exploring that idea, it doesn't necessarily mean that other people want to buy it, or the number of people that do want to buy it, or it may mean that like a bunch of people would want to buy it, but it's so hard to talk about what makes that idea cool that nobody's ever going to understand what it is that you've been building. Or you can figure out a way to tell them how cool it is. It's just going to take you 10 years to figure out. Those for me are all warning signs about, you know, this is a cool project, maybe you should work on it, maybe you shouldn't quit on it, but maybe it's not, you know, a commercially safe project to work on, self-funding for a long time if you think it's going to be too risky by the time it comes to market. And again, a lot of that is really hard to do in a way that's objective, I think. It's going to feel like guesswork, but it's still worth doing, you know, like, that was part of our project. We were looking at Night in the Woods. We had this game that we ended up canceling, which we were calling Portico, and we had Overland. And part of our decision making was, well, Overland's a survival strategy game, and that's got Steam written all over it, basically. And you know, I don't think that's going to sell the game, but we won't get discounted. It's not going to be this uphill battle. And where Portico is like, well, it's sort of a turn-based tower defense, but not exactly, and that's not exactly the sexiest genre anyway, and I feel weird about it. Versus Night in the Woods, where it's like, well, it's this gorgeous story-based thing, and it's this long story about this quiet, beautiful place. It's like, okay, we know how to talk about that. And we had other projects. We made a game called Capsule, which is like about choking to death alone in the dark. And I didn't feel like that was going to be super popular with a huge audience. So, you know, we worked on it for a month and then, you know, said like, this is the best version we can make in a month, and I don't think we can justify working on it for 2 months. Like, I think it's just too risky, it's too weird. And I think we were mostly right on that. But, I don't know, it's a little bit like, involves predicting the future, which is always kind of a mess. Like, and I really don't like the idea that all indie developers will like play it safe forever just because, you know, they're making a commercial game.
Okay. So there's another question from there.
I have a question, follow up about collaboration with other developers. So when you start an idea, you don't have a clear scope, so the game is like unpredictable, so you can estimate the time and cost. So how do you work with other like artists or sound designers? You pay them or you do a profit share about a project?
Can you repeat the question for me? I missed part of the end.
Yeah, okay.
So you work with other developers, so you do a profit share or you just pay them because the project is unpredictable, so you don't know the cost.
Do you get it?
Oh, yes. We have had this issue both with Night in the Woods and with Overland. Not as much with some of our other projects because those, most of the other things where we've acted sort of like a publisher, those projects have had their own funding situation figured out already. And on both Overland and Night in the Woods, we have been wrong about the budget and schedule. and we simply have had to borrow money mostly from other game developers. And we haven't talked about it a lot publicly yet because some of it hasn't been announced yet. So I don't know how much exactly how much detail I can go into, but basically, I'm hoping that this is something that Finji can actually do internally in the future. In theory, there's like a framework for doing this in a way that is responsible-ish. For example, on Overland, the first 6 months of development only cost about $10,000 or something like that, because it was very, very, very part-time. And we'd work on the game for a while, and then we would take some time off, and then come back to it with completely fresh attitude and a fresh perspective, and play the game, and it would feel like we hadn't played it before, and you could see the flaws, but more importantly, you could also see the things that were promising really clearly. And we just worked on it very, very part-time for about 6 months until we felt really confident that, oh, look, we figured out what's special about this game. We figured out one of the things, we figured out a bunch of the core mechanics, like that 6 months along, we only spent like $10,000. We didn't have a team yet. That version of the game, you had a party, you could find sticks and rocks, you could throw rocks at monsters, you could hit them with sticks which would break, you could hijack cars, you drive along in the cars, it had the fire sim, like it had all these parts. We still screwed up our schedule and our budget. We still had to borrow money, and we moved from an expensive city to a cheaper city. So I think basically, like, project to project, it's going to change a lot. I'm personally pretty hopeful that in the future, we're going to keep learning more about what it takes to do this kind of stuff. And we're going to try to do a better job, I think, of at the start of the project. I think actually we've been doing okay at this, but like trying to get involved in projects when they hit that stage that Overland did, where you can sit down and play a prototype and be like, this is really cool, I see what's cool about this, and then staying really actively involved with the team and trying to consult with them in a strategic way, like, okay, I know you guys really want to put this feature in, is that really completely necessary for the experience? Because it means that we'll have to borrow more money or invest more money in this project in order to make it happen. Is it essential, in a lot of ways the same way that you would, I don't know, I guess this is true for a lot of things that we do, but I think of almost all this stuff as being like a design problem, and I really think it's positive for things like marketing or things like producing or working out your game's schedule or what features should be in it, like treating that like a balancing problem or treating it like a design problem and saying, well, we could put this in or this in, but it's going to wreck the way that, this other feature feels, so we don't want to do that. Apply that same sort of critical thinking to the way you market your game, the way you produce your game, and sitting down and going like, well, this feature here is going to it's going to take us 2 weeks. That's going to cost us almost $2,000 or something, and it doesn't make the gameplay any better at all. But it makes every single screenshot in the whole game look twice as good. And that makes the game twice as easy to market later. And that actually saves us like $20,000 later. So we should definitely do this step of it. It's really hard because you have to, at least for me, I have to be able to stand way back from a project that I've been like this close to. I've been like, writing the code for how this button works, and then having to step back, way back from the project and look at it from the big picture and think about like, well, where do we spend the money and why are we spending it that way, and what is that going to get us in the long run?
But Adam, sorry. So one last part of the question was that when you are doing this kind of budgeting and figuring out a new concept and you're trying to figure out the scope of the new project. When all those are still like unknown, sort of unknown, how do you work with your collaborators? How do you work with your partners? And like, do you actually just pay them like they're your employee, or do you do some sort of revenue share work? You know, like how do you make this work in a financial sense with your
so
partners?
We haven't, right. We actually haven't been involved very much with almost all of our partner projects have been roughly at a prototype phase. I think Night in the Woods is the game that was the least ready to sit down and play, but they had a very, very strong mood, and they had done an animated trailer that was meant to represent the basic gameplay in the game, and because it's a story-based game, like predominantly story-based game, you don't have to vet, you know, does the combat actually feel good, or are these puzzle designs actually good? Our level of confidence that they had figured things out and that there weren't as many unknowns, our level of confidence was pretty high. That said, you know, both that and Overland we've just been wrong. You know, and the best thing, like, the reason I was talking so much about Overland in this weird period where we kind of worked on it part-time is our studio approach now for games that are in that stage is to basically do that. Is if you have a concept or an idea and it has that many unknowns, that you should not a giant team of people all working on it at the same time. You should have a very, very small group of people who are doing their best to answer the biggest questions around it.
But I mean, because the original question was sort of about, you know, how does the financial with the collaborator or your partners work out?
Oh, sure.
Yes,
Yeah,
like,
so we have.
Yeah.
The way Overland works is everyone who's working on Overland gets basically a monthly advance against revenue shares.
Oh, okay.
And this is not, it's not as much, it's not a very good hourly rate. It's not a very high salary, but as soon as they earn enough revenue share from the sales of the game to pay back the advances that we sent them, then they start earning revenue share. And the revenue shares that they get from the project are pretty big, especially for the people who have been on the project for the longest. There are other Overland team members that just work on hourly, so we just try to pay a good hourly rate. There are some team members that are on a retainer, so they just get us kind of a monthly payment. We have a sort of a bunch of different things. We try to just be, our big thing is to just try to be as transparent and flexible as we can, and make sure that everybody knows what they're getting into before they get into it as well as we can. For example, one of the things that's tricky about doing a project where you're either paying people advances against a revenue share, or the idea is that there's going to be a lot of revenue share in the back end, and so we're all making big sacrifices while we work on the game, that can get really tricky for a whole bunch of reasons. It can get tricky because if you work on a project for more than 3 months, some of those team members' lives are going to change. Sometimes people have kids, sometimes they move to different cities, sometimes, you know, there's a medical issue, sometimes, I mean, it can be anything. There's so many things that can happen in a person's life, and the situation they were in when they committed to work on your project might change. So what happens if you promised somebody that they would get a big rev share of the game when it's done, but they haven't gotten any money or they haven't gotten enough money for the work that they did put in on it, but they leave the project before the project is done, then what do you do? And we have a system in place for that where the longer you work, the closer the project is to shipping, the closer that contributor is to getting their full revenue share. And that works okay. It's not ideal, but we're a small team and it works out mostly okay. But on a lot of previous projects, like we've never even talked about, salaries or monthly advances or any of that stuff. It's always just been like, hey, do you have enough time to do this? I think so. Let's make a game. But like, the more that we do this stuff, the happier I am with this approach that we have now, which is like, it doesn't even matter if you have monthly advances or you don't, or you have revenue share or you don't. It's more just like doing as good a job as you can and being as honest as you can with the people that are on the project. So, when we say, hey, we'd like to cut you in on our revenue share on this project, part of that is not just saying like, haha, now I don't have to pay you. Part of that is saying, like, hey, you're getting a rev share because I think of this as being partly your game. I want you to come here and work on this with me, and we will make a thing together. And then if people like it, you will get your share of them liking the game. That will happen. Also we'll do our best to help you pay your bills, but if we run out of money, the game might not be done yet, but we have backup plans. Here's what we think we can do in case that happens. And I think, just all the times where we've backed off of this stuff, or we haven't talked about it with people, or we've assumed that everyone's on the same page and that everything's going to be fine, and that everybody has the same level of confidence that we do, or everybody that knows the same things that we do about certain things, it's always backfired. I really prefer, for a lot of reasons, being in a place where we've been, like our process for building the team on Overland, for example, which is going to be the thing that I'm the most familiar with out of all of our projects, was, we did a round of art tests first, which the idea was that we gave a bunch of people applied, we picked our favorite 5 or 10 applicants, and we paid all of them to do 1 or 2 days of work. We paid them poorly, but we still did pay them to do 1 or 2 days of work to flesh out an idea and send it back to us. And that would help us decide who to pick for the project. And then when we did pick someone, we were very transparent and upfront. We said, hey, we'd like to bring you on. We'd like to work together as a group for 2 to 4 weeks and see where this goes. And I'd like to meet you in person at this place and talk to you and see if, your ideas, I like the work you've done in the past, and the thing that you propose that we do, I think it's cool, but maybe we won't get along. And if that happens, if we don't get along in the first 2 to 4 weeks, then we're not going to work together anymore. And now we don't have to, if I've said that out front, then when that situation happens, I don't think anybody is allowed to feel weird about it. And if they do make a big deal out of it, then I know they were jerks that we shouldn't have been working with anyway. So that problem is solved. And I just feel like it's good, like I think it's inherently good to be honest and upfront about a lot of these things, but I think it also kind of, I feel like it gives me a safe space, or it gives me kind of almost like the higher ground or something. Like at least I know that I've been honest with everybody, and I've been upfront and like, this is a big project, we're gonna be doing a lot of work, and I just try to hold up our end. I feel like I try to hold up our end of the deal. If we say, I think this is a project that's gonna sell well and get a lot of attention, then I try to work really, really hard to make sure the project gets a lot of attention. The more attention it gets, the more likely it'll be to produce the kind of revenue shares that we've been talking about with our team. And I mean, these things take time, but I think if you sit down again, treat it kind of like a design problem. And this design problem is like, what if things don't work out with this collaborator who we want to work with? We think it's promising, we think it's worth pursuing, but what happens if they move to another country? What happens if they get married and now just have all these other responsibilities? And what happens if they just get sick of the project? What happens if we read them wrong and they have a different personality? If they know the possibility space up front, I think the odds of being able to resolve that situation amicably are better than they might be otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's almost 12 right now. So are you still? Do you still feel okay?
I can probably do like another 10 minutes at least.
Okay. Okay. So maybe one or at most two more questions. 还有人要追加问题吗？ 有吗？还有人要讲吗？ Okay, I think actually the audience is kind of out of question as well. Yeah, so I think it's also like a good time to wrap up because we're running for almost 2 hours now. It's like 100 minutes already.
Yeah, sorry, I sometimes give answers that are too long.
Yeah, but yeah, it's fine. It's like you can get more context about like what those answers came from.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's also cool. So yeah, I think I've also got most of my list of questions answered. So it should be. Yeah, I think I'm fine as well. So
Cool.
yeah, it's really glad talking to you, and can you give us some like last things to say about last things you want to say to maybe to the audience or some last words you want to explain about the Overland or things.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot lately about how big Overland is. Like we were talking about earlier, how this is a big game. It's a way bigger game than we made before, and the plan for it initially wasn't like this. Like it wasn't really this ambitious. I think in some ways it was like a little more cynical almost. We were thinking like, oh, we have a cool little. There's a little bit of math. We've got a cool little board game basically that I think might appeal to PC gamer audience, and that's probably a good business move. And since we started working on the project, our audio director, who's someone we never knew before, is one of our best friends, and we're over budget and we're over schedule. But we have about 2,000 players already who are having like a really cool experience that isn't like a lot of other games right now. And if we knew how long this project would take and how expensive it would be back when we started it, we wouldn't have started it. We would have just done the math and been like, nope, we can't. This is absurd. Mm-hmm. This will cause us to die. If we try to do this, we will all be dead. That is what we're talking about doing here. That's what we're proposing. But I can't imagine not having worked on it and built it now. Like the things that we've learned while building it, and the people that we've gotten to meet and work with are so important to me that it's like we've made several huge costly mistakes on this project, and it's still the coolest thing that I've ever gotten to work on, ever. So I think as much as like we spend a decent amount of time each year, I think, talking to people about trying to be more realistic and about trying to be careful about what you make and why you make it and how much of yourself you put at risk and how much you put on the line to make a project. And you know, I feel like in a lot of ways we're breaking so many of our own rules. You know, we're trying to, in the places where we can, we're trying to do things that we think will pan out. You know, like in some ways we're making a big bet or a big gamble, but on something that we really believe in, both personally and professionally. But in other ways, you know, we literally did like sell our house in one city and move to the other side of the country to be someplace that was more affordable. We'd be more likely to be able to finish out this project. And if somebody came up to me and they're like, hey, I'm working on my game, it's kind of like a mashup of XCOM and this other game, and you know, we're thinking about maybe we'll sell our house and use money from that to make the game, I'd be like, shut up, just get a job. Like, that's a terrible idea. But it's been pretty good. It's been a pretty good thing for us. So I don't know. I guess I don't want to. I cannot advocate selling your house in order to make a video game, right? Like, I can't, I'm not putting that out there as advice, but if you're working with people that you admire and you really, with all of your professional experience, with everything that you've learned as a game player, as a game designer, as a person of taste in general, and you think that you're onto something, you think you might have found something, and you think maybe, you know, even if the only thing that you found is you found really cool people to work with who kind of see the same things, they see the same possibilities that you do. Take that seriously. That's kind of almost as good as it gets when you're doing this stuff. If you find something cool and you find cool people to work with, that's kind of the best version of game development that there is. And so, if nothing else, taking that seriously, and even in the big picture, just trying to find ways to do that more reliably and to do that more often. I don't know. This is, in a lot of ways, this is like the dumbest project we ever worked on. There are aspects of it that are like so dangerous and so risky, and it's the coolest, best experience I've ever had. So, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
That's my closing thought about it.
Okay, thank you. That's a phenomenal. Thank you. Yeah, some applause, please. Yeah, and so I think you're still opening your sort of first access sales, right? Yeah, so
yeah, it's not available quite yet, but we're going to be making a pretty big announcement this month.
Okay.
So,
yeah, so
more people will be able to play the game soon.
Okay, so look out for the maybe news on Steam or something.
There will be some news.
Yeah.
There's a video game show in the U.S. coming up soon, and there will be news around there.
Okay, yeah. It's early September, right?
Yeah, something like that, roughly.
Okay. So 就是 Overland 现在应该还有接下来会有一些大的 announcement， 那大家可以关注他们的消息。然后如果你有兴趣的话，以后他如果有出像 Early Access 或者是 Beta、Open Beta 的一些，你可以想办法支持。对。好，那thank you very much, and let's just wave a hand again. Wave your hands again.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Have a great Sunday.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, thank you very much, and have a nice stream.
Thank you.
Okay, very great talking to you. Bye bye.
You too.
Yeah, thank you very much. 好，我确实有低估他的那个讲话的时间，他本来有警告过我，
我想到很多。
他自己警告你吗？
对，他有警告我。好，那今天原则上比较轻松，那我们也是因为刚好现在就是中午时间，所以就很高兴今天大家就是早起，然后参加这个上午场的，然后看起来最后还是蛮多人都有爬起来。那下午我们这边还会再开放一下，如果有人要在这边去留下，要上个厕所，要喝饮料，什么都可以。哦，对，其实后面还有饮料，对，然后就感谢大家来参与今天的这个分享会，那就大家现在可以自由活动。